You're listening to episode 62, Madeline's story, the sibling of a son with a rare genetic condition. Hi, and welcome to the Child Life On Call podcast. When your child is sick, the whole world seems to stop in its tracks. Plans and priorities change, and your number one job becomes figuring out how to get your child well again. For some of us, rest, medications, and relaxation can do the trick. But for others, it takes more. It takes countless doctor appointments, invasive medical testing, therapy, surgeries, the list goes on, and then you still may not have all of the answers or results you were hoping for. This podcast features parents of children that have an illness or medical condition and gives them a place to share their own journeys and experiences. We will talk about the ups and the downs, the highs and the lows, but one thing seems to remain the same. Children are resilient and teach us more about ourselves and the world than we could ever imagine. Thank you so much for lending a listening ear and opening up your heart to these families and this podcast. I'm your host, Katie Taylor.
Is rough. That kind of, that symbolizes a lot of like the whole journey of like not being able to just take a day to cry in bed all day. Like I couldn't do that because I still had her to take care of.
Hello, my friends. I am so thankful that you are here to listen to Madeline today. She is the host of the Rare Life podcast. So if you haven't, head over now, listen to her. She's got lots of stories, lots of parents, lots of professionals, and lots of good nuggets of information about having a kiddo with a super rare genetic condition and what that looks like for her family and for other families going through similar experiences. So I'm excited that she's here today for a couple reasons. One is just she's a totally easy person to talk with, and she's one of those people you just feel like you know right away. She's incredibly vulnerable and she doesn't sugarcoat things, so I really, really appreciate that. And then the other twist about today is her son Kimball is the one with the rare genetic condition, but we're going to be talking about his older sibling. And so I think this is a part of the podcast we haven't talked enough about, what siblings go through, what it feels like to be the big sister, what it feels like to go through these experiences, what it's like for Madeline's relationship with her daughter now that Kimball is in the picture. So you're definitely going to want to listen to the whole thing and then make sure you go and listen to the Rare Life podcast, because in just a few weeks, she's going to have my episode on there in which we talk about some strategies for some of the challenges that we've talked about with siblings. She has a ton of good questions for me. She asked me, when's the best time to have a second child if your first child has a rare genetic condition? She talks about how to have the really tough conversations about really hard things with siblings of kiddos. So I'm just so grateful that you're here today and that Madeline was willing to share her story and talk about her daughter, Wendy.
So I'm Madeline Cheney and my husband is Justin Cheney. We live in northern Utah with our two children, Wendy, who is 5 years old, and she is our healthy, just very typical child. And then we have Kimball, who is 2.5. And he has a rare genetic syndrome called dysplasia punctata X-linked type 1. It's a mouthful.
That is a mouthful.
CDPX1. So that can be that one rolls off the tongue a little bit
easier. CDPX1, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
That was good. Yeah, that's totally
Thank
you. You must deal with a lot of those acronyms. You're right. With all the
they tend to you tend to listen to it, a little bit and get the hang of it, like BBSOAS and a few others of mamos we've had on the podcast.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I'm a stay-at-home mom with them, with our two kiddos, and I also have a podcast, The Rare Life, and so that takes up every extra minute of my life. And that's been awesome, a huge challenge, but so rewarding, and just so I'm sure you relate with that. But it's just such a awesome passion project, and has brought a lot of healing to myself I didn't know I needed. So that's been really cool. I'm trying to think of like a fun fact to add in there that would be like.
I love that. How about what you asked me? You asked me something you like, something you love.
Lever, yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So I would say, yeah, it's a tough question. I ask people that, but I need to be able to dish it too, or be able to take it. So I am a lover of my bubble baths
Oh.
and of going for hikes. Love to hike outside in the trees whenever I can find trees.
And so you get to do that a lot in Utah, I would guess.
Well, I look for the trees. It takes a little more effort. I grew up in Western Washington, and
Oh,
there's
okay.
a plethora of trees there. So
Oh,
I'm always in pursuit of anywhere that looks anywhere anything like Washington, which is a little harder because it's a desert. But there are
totally.
beautiful places that we found, and that's been really fun. So,
So I was on Madeline's podcast and we talked a lot about sibling support and education. And I think in our conversation today, we're definitely going to talk about Kimball and kind of how what Madeline's experience has been like. And we're going to touch on Wendy too, who is the older sister who very much feels all of everything and every experience that happens within their family. So I'm really honored that Madeline is going to talk about Wendy too. And hopefully, other parents out there who are listening can really relate to what those siblings go through. So
mm,
I guess let's back up a little bit to, you said Wendy, you described her as your typical kind of healthy child. And so she was what, about two
she was two
when
and a half
Kimball
when
was
he was
born?
born.
Okay. So kind of walk us through the middle of that pregnancy when you guys found out something was going on.
Mm. So yeah, that's where the story begins, right? I was going in for my the infamous 20-week ultrasound where I thought we were just gonna have it confirmed. Yep, everything looks good. He's still a
Mm-hmm.
boy because we knew he was a boy from much earlier in ultrasound. They just accidentally saw that. So it seemed like it'd be such a boring run of the mill appointment. So I just went in with it was just me and Wendy. We went in without my husband this time, and I wish he would have been there, but um, for that very boring appointment did not end up staying boring where the ultrasound tech she was scanning and I remember she was taking a long time just going over and over on different body parts and I was like, oh, this is kind of weird because I had Wendy, so I knew it was kind of the
Yeah.
typical run of the mill. Oh, it looks so cute, everything's great, and she wasn't saying that stuff, and I was trying to make small talk because it was I like
Yeah.
I don't know. It was kind of silent and I felt a little uncomfortable. So I was like, so do you love being an ultrasound tech? And she was like, well, I usually work in this high risk clinic in Salt Lake, but I'm here today. And I was like, well, that must be a hard job. Like you must have to deliver a lot of bad news. And she was like, oh, it's usually the doctor. Actually, I don't actually give the bad news, but yeah, it's a cool job. And I was like, oh, that'd be so hard. And little did I know she was sitting there scanning me, being like,
Oh my gosh.
dang it, you are, we ended up being sent after we talked to the doctor and he told us about the birth defects they saw. We ended up going to that clinic and we saw her again, that high risk clinic.
Did she
So that was
recognize
kind of
you?
crazy. Yeah, I said something too. I was like, "Do you remember us?" And she's like, "Yeah."
Oh
So that
my
was kind
gosh.
of that ironic foreshadowing that I didn't realize was happening at the time. But the doctor pulled us aside after just me and Wendy after the ultrasound, and he was like, we've seen some birth defects that are really concerning. His long bones, that's their fancy term for the arms and the legs, the limbs are short for his gestation, and we can't find a nose bone, any kind of profile on him. And he was like, we don't know anything yet, but these are very classic signs of Down syndrome. So we think your son probably has it, but we'll do some testing to confirm. And so that was that conversation completely changed my life. Obviously, he was already forming that way, but that changed the course of our life and finding that out. And I was completely crushed and I felt like a deer in the headlights of like, what? Like, especially with, I don't know, Down syndrome, I was like, that's for older moms. I think I was 23 when he was telling me this. So I was like, this is not supposed to happen to me. This is not part of my plan. This doesn't make sense. And when he was telling me about it, I was just like, the news was just, oh my gosh, I was going crazy, like trying to fathom what he was telling me. And I remember looking over at Wendy. She had her little snack container and she walked over to the biohazard trash can and plopped it into the trash can. And I just remember thinking, like, what's happening right now? Like, I
Yeah.
feel so out of control of everything. And so I walked out of that appointment with her and buckled her up in the car and then just lost it and I was so emotional, just crying and crying, like, what is happening to my life? And I called my husband, had to tell him over the phone, and he said at first he thought that I had miscarried because that's been an issue for me too. But
Yeah.
no, I think he has Down syndrome, and so that was just I remember all the looks of pity as I walked out of that office because I think all the nurses knew and all the techs knew, and they're just
Mm.
looking at me like, "Gosh, you just found out." And it's
Oh,
like, "Oh, I hate this. I hate this. The pity. I hate that I'm this person everyone feels bad for. This thing that I always thought happens to other people was happening to me." And that was a day that I, think about a lot. It was a really big part of my life.
well,
So,
and having your 2-year-old there, yeah, it's
yeah.
like, isn't it amazing, like how you're able to see other people's emotions as you yourself are going through trauma? It's like this experience where you literally are kind of looking in on everything that's
Mhm.
happening. And so, where did
Yeah.
you called your husband on the phone? Where did you guys drive to? Like, I wonder, because you're still having to parent Wendy, right? It's like
Yeah.
you don't
Yeah,
get
I couldn't.
to just sulk and cry, and you don't get to do that. You can for a little bit, and then you have to drive somewhere.
Yeah, yeah, that was is rough. That kind of, that symbolizes a lot of like the whole journey of like not being able to just take a day to cry in bed all day. Like I couldn't do that because I still had her to take care of. And so after that appointment, I drove back to our apartment and I had scheduled I used to carpool with my best friend and her daughter. We would go to the store together and do a big grocery shop together because it's kind of far away. And I'd already planned that to be right after the appointment. That was supposed to be super boring and typical and just like,
Mm.
no news. And I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to keep that. She would totally understand if I canceled, but I was like, I need to see her right now. So it actually ended up being a really cool, chance to see her and gain support from her. And so it was literally like, I think I was running late to meet her because it took a little longer. That's how immediate after the appointment it was. And so she came to the house or to our apartment, and I got in the car and I was like holding back the tears as I was like buckling Wendy in, and she was like, "What happened?" And so I like broke down crying, saying like they think he has Down syndrome. And we sat and cried for a little bit and then kept driving to the store, and I was able just to unload on her of like just as all the reality I kept realizing things with her. Like it was really interesting because there's like that initial shock and then kind of like my brain searching through like, okay, who do I know who has a child with Down syndrome? What do I remember about that? Because it's a very prevalent thing, right? So you
Hmm.
have like a more to base it off than these more rare genetic syndromes like he ended up having. But I was realizing as we were driving, like, I was writing these letters to him as I was pregnant with him. Will he even be able to read these letters? Like, can I even express these deep feelings to him? And oh my gosh, wait, he'll probably live with us the rest of our lives. We never will be empty nesters like I thought we would. Like, all these things kept crashing down. Like, I was realizing these things and I would just like start crying more. And so it was interesting to process through that with my best friend there, who I call her my best friend. We only knew each other for a year before that, but we just connected
Hmm.
really well. And I'm just so grateful that she was there with me and helped me, I don't know, reach out for connection in a time when I would normally just want to crawl under the covers and like just cry myself to sleep. So that was a really long, monumental day for us.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I'm sure that she has her own kind of thought about what that was like. And you say it was such a positive experience about having somebody there to listen. And I hear a lot of parents often say, they'll go talk to somebody and they'll be like, well, we don't know anything yet, and kind of just not deny those feelings, but it's really easy to push it away when sometimes you just need
Mhm.
somebody to say all the really hard stuff with out loud. Like have
Yeah.
somebody there to be like, we may never be empty nesters. Like just
Yeah.
get it out. Because
Yeah.
we know when it stays inside, that hurts so much. And then you privately have to sulk, and that's really difficult.
Yeah, and she was really good at reflecting my feelings. So like she was looking at me with these big eyes full of tears watching me talk about this, and I could tell that she was hurting too, like right with me. And that was so, a lot of people worry about what to say, like what's the right thing to say, but I think just being there in that moment with that person in their pain and not shying away with it from it by saying things that are minimizing like, "Oh, you'll be okay," or "You need to be strong." Those kind of dismissive things that people
Mm.
usually tend to say. She didn't do that. She was there in the pain with me. And I really appreciated that.
Oh, that's amazing that she's able to do that. And the people who do say, you'll be okay and we don't know anything yet, they're doing their own way of protecting you and supporting you like the best way they know how. But I love what you say about just being there and listening is huge.
Yeah, totally.
Well, can you, I guess, take us from there? And I'm guessing that, based off your story, you didn't have a lot of answers until after the birth. And did you deliver early, or what did that look like?
So we were really fortunate because that first, for a week, we thought he had Down syndrome, and I reached out to a lot of people and stuff and joined Facebook groups and was trying to get a hold of like what my life would look like. And then we got the call back a week later and found out that it came back negative. All the genetic testing came back negative for any of the major genetic issues or chromosomal abnormalities. And so he was like, it's something really rare. And so that was something, after that first week, we knew it would be rare. So that was it was such a roller coaster, like going through this diagnosis. But we actually had his correct diagnosis. It was unofficial because they weren't able to do testing on him yet. It was later confirmed after he was born that he had the exact syndrome. And so that was really awesome because I know a lot of parents do have to, sometimes it's years before they get a correct diagnosis for their child. But we were able to, the doctor we had was really good. She was a specialist with skeletal dysplasias in particular. And so that was really cool because it's a type of skeletal dysplasia. And so she was able to recognize the different symptoms in his ultrasounds that told us that. And so, but I delivered, I was induced and I was able to make it all the way to my due date or all the way to my induction date, even though I can't remember the technical name for it, but I had tons of extra amniotic fluid. I had tons. I was huge because they aren't able to swallow that fluid like babies normally do. And so it just builds up. And so they told me he'll probably be born early because your body will think that you are 40 weeks gestation when you're not because of the size of your belly.
Yeah.
And so I was very relieved that we were able to make it all the way to the induction date at 38 weeks because I don't think he would have made it if he'd been much earlier than that because he had a lot of struggles, just surviving even full term. So.
And did they set you up for a NICU experience after that, or was it unknown?
Yeah, they said he'll be in the NICU. He'll need he'll need to be intubated to breathe because he had that lack of airway in his nose, and so we knew he would be in the NICU, and he was in there for 3 weeks for 22 days, which is much shorter than so many parents. But it was a long 22 days, especially having another child to worry about and to parent.
Yeah. So. Well, yeah, let's go back to Wendy a little bit. How did you guys talk to her ahead of time about brother being different, or, for her, this was her first experience. And so being a sibling. And so I tell parents a lot, they don't actually know any different. Like, different because you've had this whole life experience and you see sibling relationships, but, your child doesn't. So how do you frame them? How do you prepare them for that?
I'm thinking back. I don't remember having a ton of conversations with her. I think I remember that I thought it was so exceptional that she seemed to understand that there was a baby inside me. And that was kind of like this thing. I was like, wow, she understands that concept.
Totally.
I don't know that we really tried to prepare her for what was going to happen. I think we told her we'd be in the hospital for a long time. Yeah. And that he would stay there and then come home. But I don't think we talked too much about, his body is formed differently than yours. And I don't remember it, at least.
Well, she was 2 at the time.
Yeah.
So baby's going to be born from mom is a big enough concept. So it sounds like you were right on. And then, preparing for mom being away in the hospital, having the baby is a change for Wendy too.
Yeah. Yeah, my mom came down and took care of her so we could be at the hospital for, 12 hours at a time or 10 hours at a time. And it was hard to, it kind of was the beginning of a life of trying to choose whose needs to meet, because it kind of feels like it's always a constant juggle of like, oh, she needs this and he needs this. Whose should I meet right now? And I need something, And so trying to decide the more important place to be. You know, that was really hard because I was so used to just giving her 100% of myself. To suddenly
Mm-hmm.
have it spliced by this very needy, very sick child was really, really hard.
Yeah. Did you guys take her into the NICU to visit, or what was that experience like?
hmm We, so that was actually my first time of even knowing what a child life specialist was. I'd never even heard of you guys that there was even this profession, but they said the child life specialist will take her aside and play with a doll. And they had these fabric dolls that had been donated, and they decorated the doll with, I think they were like band-aids, but they also tried to do like things that she would see on her brothers. So like tubing for oxygen and stuff and a feeding tube. And so they played together for I think an hour before bringing her in to kind of prep her for that. And I really appreciate that. And I kind of I expected this big grand introduction, but it'd been like I think he was 2 weeks old at that point because she had a cold, and so they wouldn't allow her to come in yet. And so she finally could come in and meet him. And I'd seen so many of these like Facebook posts with like, sibling meet and greet and like, oh my gosh, look how precious this is, and like, give them kisses, and they're just so excited. But when Wendy came in there, she was very like, who is this? What's going on? Very skeptical, kind of staying back. And so it was not this grand meeting that I had envisioned. And I think that isn't necessarily like indicative of how their relationship would be, but it set this tone of like, oh, this is not how I expected, and
Mm.
this is not how I wanted it to be.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
And we talk about it on the episode that it's going to be on your podcast, but how that is very actually normal, and right, the abnormal is this beautiful, spectacular moment.
Yeah.
Even for a baby that's just doesn't have any medical issues, we tend to see like the fantasy and the fairy tale of all of these life experiences when truly it's not typically actually like that.
Yeah.
And the other thing I want to say and just take a note of is when you said that your life is constantly, choosing one sibling over the other. I think you could find connection probably even with your best friend. I don't know if she has kids yet, but it's like the balance of parenthood, right? It's like, whose needs do I go to? It's like you said, my needs, my husband's needs, my parents need me. They're in the hospital, whatever the situation is. It's like, gosh, that balance is so hard. And especially for you when you actually don't get to make the choice, right? Like you have to tend to Kimball's needs, so even on a day where you would like to prioritize Wendy, you don't really get that. You don't really get that advantage.
Yeah. It's a lot. It's a lot of the decisions are made for us. Mm-hmm.
So talk to me about, bringing him home and kind of the adjustment for Wendy and what that looked like, and how she's kind of grown up alongside him as he's grown too.
So it's so like I could talk for hours about their relationship and my relationship with Wendy, how it was impacted by Kimball's arrival. And it was just forever changed. It was forever changed, probably when he was born, but especially bringing him home and in my attempts to actively parent both of them. Because like I said before, I could give her 100% of my attention, my love, and we were just the best little buds. But when Kimball came home, everything changed. There was so much aggression. There was so much aggression, and I want to be careful of like not talking about too much of the details of what she was doing to protect her privacy, because I wouldn't want anyone telling the public about things I've done. Although I'll tell you what I've done. That was incorrect, but
Yeah.
I'll let her do that. But like so much aggression and so much acting out, and she was a completely different person than I knew before, and I was grieving so many things right then. I was grieving this life I thought we would have. I was grieving that my son was suffering and being poked and couldn't breathe and had this huge cervical collar and just all of it. I was grieving how terrible his life was at that. I mean, like it's improved since then. He has a great quality of life now, but like his life was kind of terrible.
Yeah.
And I was grieving that, and I was grieving this relationship that I had with Wendy. And I still grieve that in a way because it has never been the same, and it's gotten a lot better since then. We've improved, but it it was forever, tainted by this this child that I love, but like this huge diagnosis and this huge life change that came into our lives. And um she would, like, for example, I mean, I was struggling so much emotionally. I was barely holding it together, trying to go to all these appointments and keep him alive and keep him safe. And she would act out and start, being aggressive towards us and physically. And I felt this huge. I was so torn. I was the mama bear protecting my medically fragile child that I was trying to keep alive, just because, keep him. I protect him from his own body and keep him alive and give him a good life. So I was the mama bear against this other child that I love so much, and to feel that defensiveness of him. And really, like, if someone came up and started attacking your child, you'd want to attack them back. And so I
Yeah.
was feeling this really terrible torn feeling, this anger, this resentment towards her, and I hated that. Like, I still feel that sometimes, like that two parts of my heart just pitted against each other.
Mm.
And I think one way to describe it, like, watching her, she was struggling so much, and I was struggling so much, and it felt like I was just completely drowning. I was totally drowning in my grief and my sorrow and my pain, and trying to keep up with all of it, all the therapies, everything. I was just trying to survive. And it was like looking over and seeing her next to me, also drowning, and saying, like, "Mommy, help me." And I couldn't help her. And that was really hard. 'Cause I felt like I literally couldn't take anything else. I could barely handle what my son was needing. And to see another person need so much of me, I was so resentful to her. I was like, I can't do what I'm asked to do even without you, and I can't handle rescuing you right now, but I see that you're in pain, and I see that you need me, and I can't be there. And obviously it's still like this very raw thing for me. I still struggle with that even now, even though it's gotten so much better, but it's still a daily struggle of when I see that she becomes aggressive or lashes out, and I feel that anger towards her and towards just all of it. It's just so hard because I love them both so much.
Mm. Yeah, it's any parent that is listening right now is nodding their head in agreement. And thank you so much for so accurately and vulnerably describing that your heart is in pieces, not only from one child to the next, but like dealing with two emotions or three emotions at one time, on top of having like the baseline keeping Kimball alive, getting to an appointment on time, having to function with the care team, right, to listen about what's it's an impossible situation.
Yeah.
And the fact that any parent the fact that you get through this is just inspiring. And I know that's not your choice, right? I know it's not your choice to be the inspiring one, but you are. And so if you could go back to one of those appointments when you kind of remember just really drowning and being at the beginning with Wendy going through this, you going through this, and Kimball going through this, is there something that you would tell that mom or tell yourself?
I don't. That's really hard. I don't know. I'm not sure. Maybe it was just kind of this constant battle of, like, what really is best for Wendy in those times during the constant appointments. Is it better for her to be dragged along to them? Is it better for
Mm.
her to have a babysitter? Because we had people offering to take care of her. She seems to feel resentful when we go pick her up because, like, she's been abandoned or something, and we had to go to the hospital that was far away. And I don't know that I would. I think if I were able to give myself a preview into, like, our life now, that it's very imperfect. She still struggles a lot, but that there were also positive moments, lots of positive moments in there with the hard. That would be really encouraging, because it felt like this people kept telling me it's just a phase. She'll get through it. But, weeks turned into months, turned into years, and she's still struggling with it. And I don't think that phase has
Mm,
passed. And so
mm,
hearing that it was just a phase for so many others was, I took a lot of responsibility with her struggling, thinking, then something must be wrong with me. Something must be wrong with how I'm parenting her. And that's still still this insecurity of like, what am I doing wrong? What are
mm,
these other parents doing that make that, they're these little buddies together. Like, how do I facilitate that? I tried so many different things thinking this is it. This is going to help them, and it wouldn't. It would work for maybe a day, and then it
mm.
would pass, and it would go back to that resentment and that really stormy relationship between them. So I wish I could show myself like this is what it's going to be. It'll be fine.
Mm.
In fact, you'll have a lot of joy in seeing their relationship together. I think being able to know about that would have been huge. But obviously that's hard. That's hard because it's not guaranteed. And when people would tell me it'll be better, I was like, you just don't understand. You
Right.
have no idea what this is like. And so that even felt isolating. So I'm not even sure. Like, I was like, could like come to myself with like, hey, here
Yeah.
they are. Look at them. That
Yeah,
would be amazing.
exactly. Yeah.
But uh,
Well, you're giving that glimpse to another parent in the drowning shoes right now,
mm,
which is
yeah,
really helpful. Um, but I love what you're saying about the phase thing because phases do pass, but it's called a phase for a reason. You don't know how long it's going to last. It could be a
yeah,
day, it could be 5 years. Like you just don't know,
that's true.
and so it's not exactly helpful. When you hear that, especially because then you start comparing to like, well, how long was that phase for your child? And then yours goes a week
Mhm.
longer. And it just is like, well, what's different with me?
Yeah.
So as you've kind of seen, I was also thinking about the challenge there with a sibling and a younger sibling with medical issues or without medical issues. It's like they don't even get a relationship with that baby yet because the baby doesn't give much to
Yeah.
anybody, right? So it's like you do in some ways have to wait for the baby to grow for those two
Mhm.
to start that bonding
Yes.
experience. It doesn't happen instantaneous, which is kind of what we're all taught, right? Like,
Mhm.
oh, they'll be siblings for life. You get you talk about when you're pregnant by saying Wendy's going to be a big
Yeah, that's
sister.
true.
It's like that is the relationship, but it takes a long time.
Yeah. And it took Kimball longer than, just the average baby because he was deaf and blind. And so he just wasn't getting hardly any stimulation from the world. Like we'd put his hearing aids on once in a while, but that was all we could handle right then. And he was,
Yeah.
life had no meaning to him and he slept all the time because he had hypotonia and so physically he couldn't do a lot too. And so I think it just elongated that baby phase eternally. Man,
Yeah.
I tell people I hate the newborn phase, but he was in that newborn phase for so long because of his like different
Oh.
things. I know some moms love that baby phase, but I'm just like, oh, I just couldn't wait for him to start interacting more. And so when he did start interacting more, it definitely helped. Where previous to that, I think for the first year, there was zero positive
Mm.
interactions between them. Like they had no relationship. And that's one way where like people are like, "Oh, well, all siblings fight." And I'm like, "Yeah, but they have nothing. They have nothing. It's all this negative."
Yeah.
And so after that year, I think year and a half when he started verbalizing a bit and could crawl around and stuff, there were these fleeting moments of this glimpse into this friendship that I had envisioned coming so much sooner. But like just little
Mm.
things like, oh, Kimball, good job. Yeah, you did that. I was like, oh my gosh, like she just said something positive to him. Like that right there was like it took a year and a half for her to say or to have those positive interactions. And so they meant so much to me then. And now, it's like very, very steadily and very slowly, become a
Yeah.
different ratio of how often they're positively interacting.
Mm.
And now every interaction they have that's positive, I'm just beaming. I'm just dying with joy
Oh.
because I see this relationship I just was yearning for so long and I'm seeing a glimpse into that and it's oh my gosh, it's the best. Just when they play together and I see that love between them, it's just the best.
Well, it's like it's real.
Yeah.
It's not forced, it's not fake. It's like it took a while for her to get there. And so when you have that, it's like, oh my God, it just is, it's a game changer. Talk to me now about how what their relation looks like. You say they play together. What does that look like for Wendy? Like, what would be if she could pick her favorite thing to do with her brother, or her favorite activity, or what would it be with him?
So they have bro time. That's what she calls it. They have their bro time. It's the cutest thing. She's so funny. She's like, I'm this way too. I feel like I gave her a lot of this stuff, but she's very extreme, like where she'll is either all in or all out. And so when she decides to
Yeah.
play with him a few times a week, usually now, which is so awesome, she will say, Mom, can you go upstairs? We're gonna have some bro time. She doesn't want me there. She
Oh
doesn't
my
want
God.
me on the same level. If I come downstairs when they're having their bro time, she'll be like, Mommy, go upstairs. We're having our bro time. And I have to like run back upstairs, like, sorry. Like I was grabbing a
Yeah.
snack or whatever. But like they will just get into the biggest messes. She has this huge imagination and she wants to orchestrate it and she wants him to be the player in her games. And he's so funny. He's so different than her. He's so compliant to her. So he'll do a
Yeah.
lot of it.
Yeah.
Sometimes he'll put his foot down, and that's usually when bro time ends because he starts screaming and then she's
Yeah.
mad. And but she's orchestrating these huge imaginative games where they're getting in cardboard boxes to go to faraway places, and then they need to climb the mountains to go to Neverland, and just like these huge games where
Oh
there's
my gosh.
it's a mess. It is trash when I come downstairs,
Oh yeah.
but
Yeah.
it is so worth it. Like it makes me like I'll hear Kimball sometimes protesting and I'm like, she probably is being too pushy. I'm not interfering. Like this is a relationship that they're having right now. And I will do anything to, even if it has a little bit of that negative part in it where he feels a little like domineered. I'm like, kid,
Yeah.
this is awesome. Like she's playing with you. She loves you right now. And so they have those bro times and they last for an hour, 2 hours at a time. Like like I say, she's
Wow.
extreme. Like when she wants to play with him, she is playing with him. And
Yeah. Ugh.
they're the rest of the day. Sometimes she'll have her bro time in the morning, and the rest of the day she keeps saying, "I hate Kimball. I don't like Kimball," and like just being like acting
Mm-hmm.
out towards him. I'm like, but
Mm-hmm.
you do love him. There are those times where you show that more than others, and their bro time is so precious, and I love it. I love it so much.
Oh, that's adorable. I love the title Bro Time.
Yeah.
Because it's like it's about her, right? It's like her bro.
Yep.
Like that's what it is.
Yep. Yeah. It's amazing.
A lot of times I ask parents what their child has taught them, and we typically talk about the child who is sick with medical needs. But I would love to know like what you have learned from Wendy, and what are some of the gifts that she brings to the table into your life.
Oh man, that's a great question. I think Wendy has taught me, and I knew this, I knew it in my head, but I think she really has taught me that no one is black or white. No one is 100% malicious. No one is 100% a saint. She's just this, she's Wendy. Like she has no, like she's no filter. She's just 100% herself. And I think, when she was acting out and doing these things that were really hurtful to my heart and hurtful to me and to Kimball and as our family, and I was really resentful towards her, I was also taught that like that doesn't make her bad. That doesn't make her all evil. That doesn't make her this, the bad sibling or this, oh man, she's going to be a serial killer. Cause like, honestly, we had sometimes we're like, is she okay? Like, what is she going to turn out to be? Like kindness is so important. But like, as time has gone on and she's become more and more herself again, more like that pre-Kimball version of herself, I'm, like the bro days. Like she has these times of being super awesome sister, loving to play with him, and then she has times where she's really not very nice to him. And I think that's just very true of humanity, and it's been really cool to like see that in action because I tend to try to put people in these labels and these boxes, and it's very organized and like this is a good person. Oh, that's a criminal. They're a bad person. But seeing, no, she has so much goodness in her, and this little person in there that I love so much. And along in there is also this person who is also struggling right along with me and making decisions that are not great. And she's so multifaceted that like people they're not good and they're not bad. They're just people that have these different parts of us, and we really can choose what we act on. And I think that's what we've seen is that she has started to act more on, the sweet, kind, loving, ambitious side of her that is in there right along with all the other parts of her. And I think choosing that and seeing that in her has been a great example to me to try to choose the quote unquote good part of me, but also to like give myself
Mm-hmm.
the permission to be vulnerable and to be imperfect and to have bad days. Like it's okay. It doesn't make me bad.
Oh, totally. I love like she's literally teaching you this huge philosophical idea that people spend their entire lifetime, right?
Yeah.
To try to figure out and she has demonstrated that to you in just a few short years.
Yeah.
So that's just incredible. And it's hard being a parent, and kids are hard to relate to in some ways because they're not miniature us. They're not miniature adults. They do process in different ways, and they do fly off the handle, and it's just hard to watch. It's hard to not paint that. If you were to see an adult do that, it's like, whoa. And it's hard to not see kids in that way. So it sometimes helps to expect kids to misbehave, right? Expect kids to show jealousy and show these emotions that aren't so normal for us to act on. But the more we expect them, the more it's almost like you're able to maybe like see it for what it is. Like if I expect my kid to run through the kitchen and trip over the dishwasher and hurt her shin, which just happened in my house about 30 minutes ago. Like, you know what I mean? Like I should have expected that to happen because the dishwasher was down and she was running with a bucket on her head. So like, that's on me for saying don't run in the kitchen. It's really difficult. Kids are hard.
Yeah.
Kids are really hard.
Yeah, I love how you talk about expectations because I feel like that's what my downfall was. I expected this great relationship. I expected her to be like so loving, and I think you're right. Like expecting like, no, it'll be hard. She's gonna have a rough day today because we have an appointment. Like that can do wonders.
Totally. And then, if you get to be pleasantly surprised, it's like, woohoo.
Yeah, and I'll throw in there too. One cool thing that I've learned is preparing her for that. Like on my good days and I feel on top of the game and we have an appointment, I can say, Wendy, it's appointment day. You usually really struggle on appointment days for the whole rest of the day. I don't know why, but this probably will be kind of hard for you. And a lot of times I think giving her that prep, she actually does surprise me and acts better than I expect. So there's this like, I don't know. It's interesting. I don't know.
It's totally interesting. And it's like the experiment, right? It's like, do I, don't I, and finding what works best for Wendy. You mentioned one thing about her and you said that she was ambitious, and I'm wondering if you can think of a Wendy ambitious story for us.
Oh man. Well, she has these, okay, so this is relating to Kimball, so this will be a good one to tie in, but she's gone through a lot of different like occupations she wants to have when she's older, like any other kid. And recently, I think like maybe 3 months ago, she decided on an occupation she wants, and she's kept to it to this day, which is really cute. That's a record. And she wants to have I don't know what to even call it, but she calls like it's her like a facility for buddy boys. And let me tell you more about what that is. She wants to have this, basically, I think it'd be like similar to a boarding school for buddy boys like Kimball, her in her words, that have issues with their bodies, the same kind as Kimball. So she says. Aww. So she said she just dreams up. She talked. I timed it. It was an hour and a half. She talked to me about all the details of what this would be like, and all the different details of it, and how she would wear a headset where they could talk into a speaker and order their food that they wanted, and she would only be able to give them things like crackers that she knows how to do, is what she said. But then they could make their orders, and then she would make their snacks for them and give them the snacks. And then when they barfed in their bed, like Kimball does a lot, then she would be listening. And when she would hear that, she would come in through the tent opening on the ceiling. She'd fly through, like lower down, grab their blankie, and have a secret duplicate. She used that word, duplicate blankie, that looks just like their other one. So she could trade it out, and they would think that she had just washed it. And then she would really wash the other one so they could have a dry blankie. Like things like that. And she would have a measurement device. So they would have to stand on the scale to make sure that they really do have his same condition, because they need to have dwarfism. And if they're too big, they can't come in. They need to have his issues, she said, because I know how to take care of buddy boys with this, is what she said. And so,
Oh,
moments like that, I'm just like, oh, where was this? Like, I wish I would have known this was going to come out of her mouth, 2 years ago. But it's just the sweetest, like,
oh
her
my
version of
gosh.
showing this fierce love for him and this protectiveness. And she told me, I won't have to go to college because I know how to take care of him already. And so, that was
Oh,
just the cutest thing. And she plans to work there with Kimball. She'll said, as soon as I'm a teenager, I will start this. And then once he's a teenager, he can come help me. So they're going to work together so
oh
she can
my
have, quote unquote,
gosh.
money in her purse. So, like, that little,
Okay,
it just kills me. She's so cute and ambitious.
that is so stinking cute. And like she can do that.
Yeah.
Like I don't have any doubts.
She would just go out and, yeah, she would tackle that. She is so ambitious, and she does. She does what she says she's going to do. And obviously, maybe this won't actually happen, but it is so cute.
I mean, okay, I'm gonna be the first investor, so you just let us know, and we're gonna do the buddy boy
Yeah.
thing. Oh my God, it just like shows you like the internal workings of all that she takes in, right? Like even if she would have thought of the one part about changing the blanket out, like if you throw up on it, but the fact that she also made it a duplicate, it also comes in from the top so that they don't know. It's like this is layered in kindness. Like
Yes.
it's so crazy.
That's
Oh, and
true. Like,
thoughtfulness.
that's her way of showing kindness, are these like ambitious like schemes. Like, one more
Mm.
story really fast. He was
Yeah.
sitting on the couch one day, and she said she wanted to make like a barrier like around him so he could have. 'Cause I told her, I think it's a little much. I think he needs a break from playing with you. And so she said, okay, we'll put him on the couch, and then we'll make a curtain around him so that he can have some alone time. I was like, okay,
Oh,
how are you going to make a curtain around the couch? I was like, okay. I was trying to be like supportive.
y-
It's like, so how are you going
yeah.
to do that? And so she like brought out like this like long, it's like a blow dart Nerf gun thing. She brought that out of the cupboard, and then she was like, okay, now we need a curtain. And she like put together like, some contraption, and it was a curtain around the couch. Like, she figured it out. And so
Oh my
that is her love
gosh.
language, is she comes up with these schemes, and she
Oh,
does it. She executes, and it's amazing to watch that little brain work. And the way she shows kindness. And I think it's just
I
so cute.
That's so awesome. Oh, well, you got to play to that then.
Yeah.
And like the next time, give her these little jobs that aren't so easy that, anybody could do it, but like only Wendy knows
Yeah.
how to do it in this exact
Yeah.
way. That's so
It stumped
cool.
me. I was like, I don't know how to do that. You be able to
Yeah,
do that. And then she
totally.
did it. She did it. Yeah, it was
Oh
amazing.
my gosh. Awesome. Well, is there anything else that you'd like to share about your family or sweet Wendy or Kimball, or just tell our listeners, you've got your podcast, which is just a wealth of information and stories, and you've got other professionals on there. Where can we find that? How can we listen to you? Tell us all the things to connect with you.
Yeah. So, um, I have a podcast, The Rare Life, and it is kind of based on this, like, it's not for the faint of heart. We don't dodge around the nitty gritty, really deep, dark, hard stuff, which is also what I love, though, is getting into that and getting into
Mm,
what all the parents are thinking and feeling, but are too scared or too ashamed to say. So that is my
mm,
podcast, The Rare Life. And I have a website, therarelifepodcast.com. So that's an easy way to find, the episodes and stuff if you're not a podcaster, but it's also a podcast listener, but it's also on all the different podcasting apps. And on Instagram, I'm very active and talking about, the the deep dark stuff, that a lot of people don't talk, maybe oversharing, I don't know. But on Instagram, I talk a lot about our experiences and about the podcast. So that's, I'm at the_rare_life on there. So that's another fun one to join in on. And yeah, I would love to be friends.
yeah. Yes, we'll definitely go over and follow her. And then, Madeline, thank you so much for so courageously tackling so many of the things that are hard. And I love how you put it, like saying the things that parents feel too shamed to say. I mean, that's 100% what we have to do to support each other, because there's no need for us to keep this shame inside anymore. I think it's very important to talk about. So thank you so much for doing what you do. And I don't know how you do it.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Madeline, for being a part of this podcast and opening up your heart and your time. What is time? I know you don't have a lot of it. And the fact that you're able to produce this incredibly structured, amazing podcast on your own is so cool. So we just really appreciate you being here, and make sure you go follow Madeline online. All right, guys, have a great rest of your week, and I will see you again next week. Bye. Thank you for listening to the Child Life On Call podcast. I'm your host, Katie Taylor, and you can follow us at Child Life On Call on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Please rate and review to make it easier for other families to find us. We have cute merch available at www.bonfire.com/store/childlifeoncall, and you can listen to more episodes and find resources at childlifepodcast.com.